When dealing with a falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
All right. To those listening live or to our patrons, welcome back. For those listening weekly, welcome to the Shift to Reason Radio, the Brainstorm production that tries to educate and inform. We'll take current events and important skeptical topics and try to analyze them critically. Remember, we're live on brainstormradio.net every second Friday, and today is February 16th, 2018. I'm still joined by Lisa, Dr. Lisa.
Oh my God, thank you. How did you know?
Renee.
Hello.
Bassett.
Hello.
Brandon.
Hello.
Our guest host, George.
Hello.
And the always amazing Dave.
You have to include my degree now. If
Dr. Dave.
No, I'm bachelor.
Dave, comma, BA, is that right? BA?
Professor Dave.
BSW. I have a BSW.
BSW. It's like an SJW, but
full of BS.
But full of BS.
Fucking a lot of
Closest
BS.
thing to SJW you'll get, yeah.
Yeah, so that's that. We are, I guess we got, Renee's story isn't really fit into one of our regular categories. It's just for fun.
It's for fun, although it kind of fits into Woo.
Right, yeah.
At the very least, 3 of the 5 fit into Woo.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what do you got for us?
Okay, so I found this surfing around on YouTube. I found the top 5 martial arts that are bullshit.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Is capoeira on the list?
Actually, that's not on this video, but that's in video part 2.
Okay.
Also bullshit.
Also bullshit. Although it's fucking amazing bullshit.
Right.
But
Really more of a form of dance.
That's actually exactly what it is.
it's kind of a mixture, but it's more dance than anything else. But that's
What isn't dance?
So anyway, basically it's the first 3 that were total bullshit. They kind of you can probably lump them together because what it is first one is they called it empty force, and then the second one was no touch knockouts,
which is definitely bullshit.
bullshit. And then the third one they called it like chi or force field, which is all 3 of them work in this idea that the human body works on chi or inner energy, and you use that to manipulate to use for defense. Like the first one was,
I've seen this training video. It's called Dragon Ball.
that is the force field one exactly.
Nice.
Okay, we'll kind of work backwards then. We'll start with that one just because that one's funny as fuck. They showed these people on a beach, where they're focusing their energy and they're just shaking and all this stuff. And if you just focus and focus and focus, then you just throw the energy.
3 episodes later.
Yeah. Well, they actually had one where they were focusing the energy and they were supposedly charged at each other to, prove that they will bounce off the force field. No, this poor woman got flattened by the so-called instructor. Just boom, right into the sand. Like it was hilarious. And it's kind of the same thing with the other ones too. Like the no touch knockout. It's the same thing where it was totally. It only works if the other students believe the same bullshit, and and so they're doing their little comes with their attacks, and he waves his hands, and they drop, and all this other shit. And he actually apparently in this video, and I've heard other ones as well, where he had a $5,000 bet that he could take anyone on because he's this grandmaster of this form. They said it in the video as a karate master, MMA karate master or something. I don't know exactly who he was, but he was an actual fighter. And just the guy standing there waving his hands, and the guy just boom pops him right in the face.
You know, the nice thing about these like fake things is that it's not, like when like the religious people, they have like this thing, oh, I'm going to heal you, and I shake, oh, now you're healed and your cancer's not coming back. It's hard to disprove that so instantaneously as you can with like bullshit martial artists versus real martial artists. It's pretty instant, right?
If you got punched in the face, then it's fake.
It's not connected to this video, but there is one that went out where there was a challenge. There was a Chinese MMA fighter challenged a lot of, like in China, the Wushu, which is basically the more flashy martial arts, the more show martial arts. And he says, I'll challenge you. And he had a Tai Chi master take him up on it. And this MMA guy destroyed this guy in like 30 seconds. Like just done. And the thing is there was a backlash because they thought that this MMA, which was a Western style, was so disrespectful to the traditional forms and blah, blah, blah. This guy was getting death threats apparently. Like it was ridiculous. But, and that's where I thought this would be funny is because the first three was all about manipulating, imaginary energies and,
right.
And they just showed epic fail after epic fail after epic fail.
Yeah. As soon as you said it's like, oh, it requires the other person to believe too. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was the Russian slap fighting. That was funny. I don't know how to describe it. You have to watch it. It's basically these guys, like, they're pretty much slapping themselves. Like, it's almost like, you see that cartoon. Well, they do it on Simpsons where it's like, I'm just going to keep doing this. If you happen to get hit as I'm walking towards you, and like they show them demonstrating it. And at one point he was holding up a piece of paper and he's like, oh, look at this. I ripped a piece of paper. Like, what the fuck was this? Like, yeah, it's stupid.
Paper, no fight back.
Yeah.
That's right.
It was really stupid. It was hilarious. And as they had it in the video, as someone commented, they called it Slaporera. Nice. I'm like, that's just funny.
I feel like all of these videos should have been interspersed with Mr. Miyagi sayings, like those little clips.
Yeah, they almost should. But I mean, and then the final one they had, which they said was total bullshit. That one, I'll say, I don't know if I believe. They said Wing Chun is bullshit.
Okay,
really?
Yeah, and I think it's a case of that. With that one specifically, I think that was more of a case of with certain different martial arts. I'm no expert at all, but certain martial arts don't match up. If you're doing Wing Chun versus Wing Chun, that's fine. But they had a video of a Wing Chun guy taking on a boxer, and it just didn't work.
For those who don't know, Wing Chun was invented by Bruce Lee's master. No, right?
It wasn't invented by him, but
he definitely was a huge advocate.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, like, for example, there's a lot of martial arts that don't do any grappling. So if you don't do grappling and you get into a real world situation and you end up on the ground, you're fucked, right? Like, you don't have any training. What are you going to do?
Yeah, there's that other that gets into the more gray zone and actual argument of the martial arts. Like, I take Krav Maga, go to any Krav Maga video, go to the comment section, which you never should do. Oh, Krav Maga is bullshit. A Cali knife fighter would destroy you, and a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy would destroy you, and blah 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 blah, and it goes on and on and on.
You can say, at least there's no BJ in our name.
Yeah.
It goes on.
Well, yeah.
I can think of comebacks for you.
Exactly. But,
you're welcome.
But that's where that's a matter of not necessarily full on bullshit. It's just, is it as effective as something else?
That's what I was thinking.
Sitting there focusing all your chi energy, that's bullshit.
Some martial arts may be also kind of practiced as an art, right? Like as a fitness or as a motion, but it's not necessarily something that's going to help you in a back alley.
Yeah, isn't that like
every
what
back
Tai
alley.
Chi is to the large point? Like, they kind of talk a lot about magic feelings and whatnot,
and energy and flow, and that's
a lot
part
of it's movement and just doing a thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Although some say that it is a martial art, it's a fighting style, but I don't.
It's not really a fighting style.
Not really.
You see, when I was doing Strongman, I would also often get told, "Yeah, well, this guy could kick your ass."
That's true. Not my specialty.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm a strongman, not a fighter.
Was supposed to be like meant for like self-defense, or it's just meant for something like art style fitness? Because I just did Strongman for fitness, but people assumed I could fight other people.
Right, yeah.
Well, just because you're big doesn't mean you can fight.
Yeah, I definitely can't fight. I get hurt and I get sad very fast to the point where there's like, starts raining. It's coincidentally on my eyes.
Yeah.
That's like, that reminds me, because I was always into bodybuilding, not strongman. Mm-hmm. And people go, well, what are you lifting? Well, not as much as that fucking guy. Like,
and that's what people forget.
Aesthetic. Like,
yeah. You want to look good. You don't want to be the strongest.
Yeah. I mean, it's, once again, I just thought it was a funny video. Like, the more so for the bullshit. The first 3 bullshit ones, and the slap or arrow was just funny as shit.
But I just wanted to share my own anecdote regarding the bullshit martial arts.
I gotta hear that.
I was a witness and an agitator. I met a guy who claimed to have invented his own martial art.
Oh, nice.
Did it by watching kung fu movies, and basically
please go on.
Makes me think of Key and Peele. I watch a lot of fighting movies. I picked up a few things. You picked up a few things, eh?
He claimed to have basically amalgamated everything into his style. And I had to just it's like, so you've never actually done any of this.
Yeah.
You've never physically practiced. You've never, it's like all you claim to see is that you'd be able to copy the movements. You're not really Taskmaster, are you?
Right.
It was bad. But this is a guy who had a history of being completely self-assured regardless of the ridiculousness of his claims. But yeah.
The good thing about, like, let's say, Tai Chi or Wing Chun is that it looks amazing on cinemas.
Well, that's the thing, is like, to getting into the more practical side of it. Like, I mean, the thing is a lot of that stuff is in China. My understanding of it, and I could be wrong distinctly, is that it's developed into what they call Wushu, which is the big flowery, flashy show martial arts. The actual practical kick your ass shit. It's not practical for that.
Because if you watch like MMA, there's a lot of it where they just kind of look like they're hugging.
Yeah,
and like one of them will kind of like twitched and like whack the other guy in the face, which I'm sure hurts a lot and really shitty. And it's all very technical, but it doesn't look that epic.
It doesn't look cool at all.
It doesn't. It looks like it looks pretty gay.
They call those tunnel fights.
It does.
Yeah. It's like WWE. Like
they have their balls on their faces. Like it is. Like it's all.
That's what I mean. Like it's so much more entertaining to watch a guy who gets this pointless elbow to elbow action and gets knocked out.
Yeah.
And it's like, how does it happen? But you don't care because the crowd's electrified. It's so
looks amazeballs.
Yeah. But that's the thing is like with the UFC, like when it gets to that kind of stuff. And it's very technical, and I've done some of that. I'm terrible at it. But, is that it's very technical, and, just the standard fans, it's boring shit. It's boring. It's like, you have no idea how exhausting that is and how technical that is.
Yeah.
All they want to see is the
Stone Cold Stunner.
Basically, the WWE shit. They want to see the knockouts. They want to see.
I want guys flipping off the top rope.
Exactly. It's so cool seeing that.
Oh, can they bash each other with chairs now in UFC yet?
No, that's how the UFC started.
Yeah, that's right. They wanted to be a sport.
Put these fuckers in a cage, no chairs.
Yeah.
Because when they first started it, there was pretty much no rules. There was pretty much no rules, and that's why they got known as like human cockfighting. So they had to create rules.
Yeah.
Human cockfighting.
Yeah.
Not what it sounds like.
Yeah. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. That's the name of the episode.
Yeah, that's the new name of it.
The gay porn has a name, right? You know what I'm saying? Anyways.
I haven't actually seen that one yet.
All of the episodes of UFC could be called human cockfighting, and it could be.
I can't wait till like Megan hears this podcast.
Does
What
she
did you
listen?
talk about? Was it atheism? I was like, yeah.
Wait.
Human cockfighting.
No, wait, back up. Your significant other listens to the podcast?
We try to listen to it together.
She's got to be the only one. Corey, back me up.
Yeah, Stephanie doesn't listen. Yeah.
Destin's definitely doesn't. Mine doesn't. No. Wow.
Well,
No
when
comment.
you have it on speaker at home, right? There's very little choice.
Listen to
in
this,
that.
dear.
Yeah.
It's fucking amazing. She's like, fuck, I
love
hate
you,
these
Megan.
assholes.
And you think these people are fun, hey?
And you're going to put it on after you were on it and already listened to it once.
I'll be honest, my voice is not very attractive. I will say
Yeah,
that.
I don't want to
Like,
listen to my. I've never listened to one that I'm on.
No, you guys have fine voices. Like, I like to listen to it. But man, I'm hearing
Everybody
myself.
thinks
is
other people's voices are fun.
We're not all Angela and Leo, okay?
No, that's true. Angela and
Those
Leo's
two.
voices are good.
Fuck them. Fuck you guys. I'm glad you're not here and make us look bad. Sound bad.
I like you, Angela.
Okay, now that we've totally derailed.
All right, let's do a woo report.
I'm not a scientist, but if I can tell you your science sucks, then your science really sucks.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit. Fuck.
Video games do this.
All right, Lisa.
It's
You're
my
up.
turn?
You're up.
Okay. I'm not good like Renee at like saying stuff and organizing it in a way.
I'm judging.
I'm not good at this, but I feel passionately about this. Hopefully I won't suck too bad at it. Okay, so let me remind you, before I even talk about my story, let me remind you of David and Colette Stefan, who were convicted in 2016 of failing to provide the necessities of life for their 18-month-old. Sorry, I wasn't sitting right. My bad. Sorry, Dave. I'm the worst. Oh, he's pissed at me now. I can tell. They failed to provide the necessity of life for their 18-month-old son, Ezekiel. So that little boy died of a bacterial meningitis infection. So he got sick in February 2012. At the end of February, they thought he had a cold. It got worse. They thought he had croup. They treated it with smoothies, boy olive leaf extract, garlic, hot peppers, and horseradish. And they used cool air and a humidifier. He seemed to get a bit better, but he went to preschool. He played. He ate. Then he got a setback. He was lethargic, laid in bed all day, didn't eat or drink. So this is about a week later from when he originally got sick. Got worse and worse, basically. Got maybe slightly better for a few days and got a little bit worse. Then he got refused to eat or drink, lethargic. They brought in their friend who was a nurse. The child's body was so stiff that his back was arched, and they had to give him fluids through an eyedropper. The nurse, who's their friend, suggested they take him to the hospital or to a doctor, and they did not. They drove so they lived in rural Alberta. They drove to the metropolis of Lethbridge to pick up an echinacea mixture from a naturopath. This is while the child was too stiff to sit in his car seat because of his meningitis and had to lay on a mattress in the back of the vehicle.
This
was maybe a couple weeks. That was about a couple weeks after he was first sick, and then they eventually the next day finally called an ambulance. He was driven to Lethbridge and then helicoptered to the Children's Hospital in Calgary, where he died of meningitis. So this couple, this winners of parents, were convicted of failing to provide the necessities of life, and this was actually upheld by an appeals court, and I think it's actually this case is going to be seen in Supreme Court shortly. Incidentally, I just found out as I was researching this that they had another child since then. They already had two children, as well as Ezekiel. Now they now have a fourth child. So they actually procreated. The sentence they received was, I think he got 4 months in jail and she got 3 months of house arrest. So. Yeah, and meanwhile, the father, David Stefan, has gone on social media doing tirades against the justice system and how it was biased and totally unfair and blah, blah, blah. So he's not even close to sorry for what's happened, and he has certainly not learned his lesson, because he owns a company that sells Nothing. It sells shill. So he promotes EM Power Plus, a daily multivitamin replacement capsule, which are meant to help with mental disorders such as bipolar disorder, ADHD, and stress. It is distributed by True Hope Nutritional Support, a company that was co-founded by Stefan's father. So this fucker was invited to speak at a series of wellness expos in Saskatoon, Edmonton, and Calgary, I believe, or Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Calgary, and Edmonton. He actually did have several keynote speeches in Saskatoon. Apparently, people came up to him and he was signing shit after. They were hugging him and wishing him well. So I don't even know like how this man could possibly have any support. But when when I think it was CBC became aware that this was happening, they publicized this, and this wellness convention actually lost 2 sponsors. They lost Sobeys and Flamin Fitness. And at that point, the organizer agreed to finally pull this asshole from their speaking engagement. So that's basically what happened. Rick Thiessen, the owner of Health and Wellness Expos of Canada, said he knew about Stephen's history before booking him, but that he doesn't judge him on his personal life, only on his product. Having seen and looked at the documentation and had conversations about what happened, it's between them and their God, apparently.
Oh.
So the issue that Dave had in terms of being arrested have nothing to do with his healthcare product that he's selling. So that was the argument that guy made. But luckily lost sponsors. And he talks also about how he loves trying to book people who are controversial because that's what people want to talk about and it attracts attention, apparently so. But luckily in this case, I think that David Stefan not having a platform to sell his. I mean, I guess I don't know. One part of me is like, well, like maybe he shouldn't be judged his whole life for this one thing that he did. He's paying his debt to society, but in another case, he's actually still just selling schwill. So
the same exact.
It's just
thing.
He obviously he seems so belligerent and so. What's the word? Entitled. He just has no concept of how
total
retarded,
lack of
total
remorse,
dumb,
unrepentant.
Unrepentant, but he just obviously doesn't comprehend how stupid, he has been, and how it caused the death of his own child, and it's abominable. So that was my long ranty woo report.
No, that's something. I mean, he should have never been in a position where he got the offer to go to this wellness expo. Though wellness expos strike me as bullshit right off the top.
Oh, yeah.
So
how much good science-based evidence could there be at a wellness expo?
Yeah.
Probably not much. But, I mean, really, that guy, I don't know. I wish there was a way to make it illegal for them to have children. I don't know.
When you consider wellness, it's like, well, they were saving money for a while before that. Their 3rd child or 4th child.
I feel like if he's still this belligerent and this insistent that he's never done anything wrong and that blah blah blah, I feel like their other children should be taken away, because I mean it clearly shows that if the events were to repeat themselves, they would do the same thing and these children would be in danger. I don't know, it's just it's absurd.
There was an interesting conversation where people say it's my child, my choice, right? They gave a different perspective. I never thought about that. It's children can't legally consent. They have to rely on parents to abide by the law. And since I think naturopathy is not illegal, it allowed them to go ahead and do what they want. Yeah. And that's not me citing for him.
No, but given how sick that child was, they should have brought him to a doctor. It's so clear. Yeah.
But the thing is,
a child who can't sit in a car seat because his body's too stiff. Come on.
That's the trouble with the law.
This stuff
right?
I'm agreeing with you on, right? It's more so I'm thinking of how he may not be in trouble.
Yeah,
but he is in trouble. He was convicted.
Yeah, he did get convicted. That's that.
It's over. He's appealing it. He's already served his sentence, but he's appealing it. People over and over.
Yeah, people do argue that it's their child, so they have the right to, I guess, let it die if they want. But these are also the same.
I brought you into this world, and I can take you out.
Well, I think parental autonomy has limits, and I think society has to step in and say, yeah, okay, you can decide if you want to raise your child to, I don't know, be a dancer or take piano lessons, or I don't know, you know what I mean? At some point, okay, but these life or death things. I mean, this reminds me of the case 3-4 years ago where the little girl had cancer and they refused to let them treat her with chemotherapy, and they took her to a charlatan in Florida, and
she actually died recently.
It wasn't that long after all that happened. It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that story gets even more complicated when you talk about the cultures involved and the views of the parents and whatnot. But it's still a child who dies because they didn't get the proper treatment.
It's
and
it's very sad. Very tragic.
It's very sad. And then to promote this particular, like this guy being promoted as a wellness expert at this expo or whatever, it's
But he's clearly got an audience. Like, for example, one thing that was mentioned in the article, he was complaining about his $500,000 in lawyer fees, which I believe lawyers are very expensive. Through the course of his trial, I guess they crowd raised $150,000.
Support.
$150,000 worth of Canadians' money went to.
If you ever have faith in humanity, just remember Jordan Peterson gets $50,000 a month.
Yeah, from nothing.
From Patreon.
It's probably not going to last that long. I mean, a couple years.
Well, now he's got a best-selling book. So.
I know, but this is his moment. Anyways, you know what? Jordan Peterson is like literally 1,000 times better person than David Stefan is. So, in my opinion,
that's fair.
I don't think Jordan Peterson would allow a child to die because he doesn't. Yeah, because he doesn't believe in going to a doctor. So he wins.
So in that,
he just makes terrible philosophical arguments, and I feel like I can forget. That's not like I mean, it's not nearly as much of an ethical quandary. So
there are troubling aspects, but he's not killing children.
Yes. So there's lots of good things that can be said for Jordan Peterson, such as not killing children.
It's like that's a relative, like, not evil. It's like, well, at least he's not killing kids.
You know how we...
Right.
Well, that's the bar that David Stefan sets.
You know how we interviewed Gleb earlier?
Yep.
And he says, like, the best way to communicate with these people is like when he made that global warming example, is like get to the base of why they don't like it.
Right.
And the triggering factor was for this person that his father lost a job because of the economical implications of dealing with global warming. Why would anyone, if they know about this guy, support him?
Because
the tough question.
Because they're already emotionally invested in, big pharma is out to get you. Everything should be natural, blah, blah, blah. All these parents tried to do as the best they could, and they didn't know, and blah, blah, blah. And now he's being persecuted and the poor man, his child's already dead, and he's already sad about that, and blah, it's.
They tried so hard, they just didn't put enough turmeric in there.
Yeah. Apparently.
There's also
that's what I'm thinking. Like,
there's a little bit of an anti-authority stance in there too, where it's like, I don't want the government to handle anything with my kid. It's like this sort of thing where you get kind of the recluses too, where it's just don't touch, it's mine, don't do with it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want big pharma, but I'm going to be part of this big wellness conference,
big wellness
to sell my shit,
Yeah. All right, let's do a short break, and then we'll come back for Bassett's story.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug, or other gear from our store at cafepress.ca/Brainstorm Podcast Gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
The Hardcore Skeptic Examines is a bi-monthly documentary-style podcast that includes interviews, research, and commentary from your host, Corey Johnston. That's me. As the host of the Brainstorm podcast, I've spent the last 3+ years trying to spread critical thinking and skepticism while having fun. This project is intended to look at some of those same topics covered by Brainstorm, but a bit deeper. With the long intervals between episodes and the long format, I'm hoping to provide good information that educates as well as entertains. Check out my Patreon for more details at www.patreon.com/hardcoreskeptic or follow my Twitter @hardcoreskeptic.
Have y'all ever wondered what it's like to be a redneck with empathy? Have you never heard of a Southerner who isn't a blathering bigot? Well, have I got the show for you. It's the Podunk Polymath Podcast, hosted by myself, Chris, and it's the sentiments of a secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. You can find me and the show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or your favorite podcatcher. Y'all stop on by and take it easy now, okay?
Yeah, that's Chris, the Podunk Polymath Podcast. He's a good friend.
Can I just say, we were during the break, we were talking about parental intuition, and people, I agree people do rely on it too much, but I also feel though as a parent that sometimes I just know that my child's behavior is abnormal for him because I know him really well. I know what he does every day, and I see that he's different than the other kids. I know that his behavior is abnormal. This is not. You know what I mean? And so I can kind of see that argument, but not to the extent that I'm going to risk his life if a doctor's telling me that it's the opposite. Anyways, just thought I'd point that out.
No, that's the thing.
I think there is an argument to be made there because, you're with them every day,
Yeah, it's versus an illness that you may or may not know anything about. And many parents do not know.
So I wouldn't look at my kid and be like, no, I know my kid. He does not have bacterial meningitis. Like that is not, you know what I mean? Exactly. But I might look at my kid and say, no, I know my kid. He, he's not, this is not normal for him. He's normally got way more energy. I'm taking him to a doctor. Right. Or you know what I mean? Like that's what I mean.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. All right, Bassett, what do you got?
I got a story which you all will agree on was necessary but I'm going to put a really weird twist on it. Uh-oh. Okay. Because, debates are nice. So, there's this entire Ontario college that stopped its homeopathy program. This college was provincially funded, so your taxpayers went to this program. Once this doctor, Professor Joe Schwartz, heard about this, he got a petition signed with 90 prominent scientists to go ahead and have this program canceled there because essentially it is absolutely useless. There's no scientific evidence behind it, and there's no way something should be provincially funded for this and it's giving students a false hope, and it was canceled there. There's no real backlash about it here. And I'm sure most of you agree. In fact, I hope all of you agree that it had to happen. But it kind of goes into a different direction than I thought it would. Because I was thinking, okay, there's a lot of university programs that students are going to come out of thinking, I don't really need this. It's not going to do this. I feel that way about my degree. It is useless. I didn't need it for my job.
So what's the difference with homeopathy?
So homeopathy is bullshit.
Right.
But there's so many aspects about business that's just bullshit. There's a lot of lies in it. There's a lot of conspiracies around it too. And you're in there thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to apply this afterwards. So I'm being kind of fed a lie here. I'm paying massively high amounts of tuition just to go and to come out of it with an enormous debt just so I can write one line at the bottom of my resume. So at what point do we say, what point do we stop choosing what's practical? Because the doctor's whole argument is it's not fair to the students.
Right.
How is applying a degree that you'll only really use in university and never in the practical life really worth it? There's sometimes you go for the scholarly standpoint, and there is an aspect of where there's some scientists there who do study homeopathy, but just for the sake of saying it's a lie.
Right.
And that's kind of sad as it is, but there is a department in that here, right? So there's that sort of practicality of studying homeopathy. It's phenomenal. Let's even take it a step back to high school. How much of what you've applied in high school we're using nowadays, right? There's different like arguments and cases for it. But there's a lot of stuff that you got to go ahead and look at the education system and think, where should my taxpayers' money be going? Should it be to teach these kids how to work? Should it be to make them scholarly?
Yeah,
but the argument isn't that a college on homeopathy isn't practical. In fact, you could argue that if you were just going to argue on practicality, you could say, well, somebody could get their degree in homeopathy and then go out and make lots of money, screwing people out of their money, saying that homeopathy is real. You use your fake degree, your real degree from a real institution to back that up. So economically, you've gotten a job out of it, and that's not the argument he was making. He was saying that you shouldn't be able to get a degree in something that's total bullshit. Business is not total bullshit, right? I mean, marketing is certainly bullshitting people, but the art of how to do that is a real thing that can actually be evidence based with focus groups or with how you're going to do that. You know what I mean? So economics is not bullshit. Finances are not bullshit. Certainly, you may be swindling people in business. Fine, right? And there's a whole bunch of bullshit to working in an office, of course, or to working with other people in any sort of context in any workplace. But that doesn't mean that it's okay for a real, respectable college to be offering a degree in something that's completely invalid.
Yeah, I wonder though. I wonder, is it the difference between, because homeopathy is a lie, right? So
absolutely.
So a degree in a lie is not okay.
Yes.
So what I just wonder, like, are there aspects of business that are like a degree in a lie?
Marketing.
No, but
I'm kidding.
That's not a lie. That is lying.
Yeah, that's an evidence based degree in how to convince people how to manipulate people, which is anyway.
And you can get a degree in it.
Yeah.
So I'm not here to disagree.
But you're not bullshitting around. You're not saying, I'm
not saying the whole like homeopathy just right. I'm just more so arguing where does the education, like, okay, we won't sell on a lie, but should we be justifying lying as an art? And should we be giving students the option for it?
But mind you, I don't know if that's totally
ethically,
there's an ethical issue there.
You go in for a degree in marketing. You are marketing.
Yeah.
But hopefully no one dies because if someone dies out of the marketing, that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Then
your degree is in propaganda.
Yeah.
Well, part of the question I imagine is, what is the course, like, how is the course being offered? Is it a science or a medicine course, or is it a course? Yeah. Then if that's the case, then you're selling them something that the idea that this thing works, it does not.
And it's also a matter of I read the article, but I didn't quite gather what kind of school it is. Like, I mean, because
it's a kind of felt like a community college.
Yeah, it's a community college.
I mean, if that's the thing, is what kind of, it's not a clown college. It's supposed to be giving actual honest degrees, honest. Otherwise, you can get you can make a course and get a degree in astrology.
It isn't even a college of naturopathic medicine, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a thing in some places.
You know what, though? It also devalues everyone else's degree, right? So if you have your nursing degree from this college, and now it turns out they also have a homeopathy degree, it devalues your degree. It does a disservice to the other students as well.
It makes it look like a degree from Georgian University or whatever.
Phoenix Online.
Yeah, that's right.
Trump University.
So, George, you being in university now.
Yep.
How do you feel that, let's say you compare your engineering courses, let's be honest, engineering is the most difficult.
Some aspects, I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
The physicists.
Yeah. More so like, okay, I'm not going to get into that argument. I should not have overstepped there. I'm just more so comparing to like business aspects. I'm sure you've heard about the Business Student Society.
I have.
Yes. And you've heard about the parties. You've heard about the absolute joke it can be.
Yeah.
Right? How would you feel about now getting a degree from the same university that goes ahead and offers that business program?
Well, I would definitely feel like I was being cheated because, number one, the U of R already has its problems with the engineering department, and they're trying really hard to present engineering students from the U of R as very high caliber, which who knows how successful they really are. I think they're doing an okay job of it so far. But if the U of R was to offer homeopathy or whatever, that is a degree that will help people kill other people, I think that getting a different degree from the U of R, people will maybe feel a little bit biased against the U of R.
Even if it's something completely unrelated.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. U of R is already, it's not the most prestigious of schools. No. So getting a job like with a U of R degree, a lot of people are like, that's a fucking joke. You should go to a real school. And I'm like, well, I think I'll manage. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting discussion. I don't know where the line is where a particular course that isn't homeopathy like business crosses that line. I don't know enough about it.
Exactly. And I'm not going to, like, there's many times arts has been given an example, and I don't really know about these things, right?
Right.
But I know that, university should feel like you're there to gain knowledge, not necessarily I'm here just for a job.
Yeah.
You're there to advance yourself, but then people go into enormous amounts of debt just trying to gain this knowledge, and I feel like nowadays, like, to be knowledgeable, it can be quite costly.
Yeah.
Or at least the social implication of going to university.
Right.
I think at least maybe part of yours could be resolved by whether or not it's considered a requirement for the degree. You still have the classes, they do exist, but they're not required to get a business degree, as an example.
That's true.
Another thing with the homeopathy degree is the reason why the school probably even has that as an option is because they know they can make a lot of money off of that.
Yeah.
Because people will sink their time and money into it. So the school definitely has a moral obligation to not promote that sort of thing.
Yeah, it does seem like universities are more and more willing to push ethical boundaries for their bottom line, right? Like, to a very large extent. Like, for example, whatever it is, 50% of university courses at this point are not taught by professors anymore. They're taught by sessional faculty that they hire on a semester by semester basis. They pay them pennies, like on what they pay actual professors, and they treat them like dogs. They have no benefits, and they get away with it. And they, and arguably the students also get a substandard education. So I mean that's not U of R. That's everywhere. That's Harvard all the way down to what's this university, Georgia, whatever it's called.
Yeah,
Georgia.
So
there you go.
Yeah, it has always kind of struck me as odd that you hear about students, PhD students, teaching other students. And I mean, maybe that's fine, but maybe it's not. I don't know.
It's often people with the PhD at that point, but like it's actually also like the big criticism of it is how you're actually treating those people, right? There's very few jobs as faculty. So whereas in the past they used to offer, you could get a PhD and then go get a job as a professor.
Right.
You now can't. You have to be a sessional for 10 frickin' years. And maybe it's really tough. It's really tough.
And actually, I just remembered the United States. They used to have a program where you could use that teaching as credit towards your PhD tuition. and they just pulled the tax credits off of that. So now you can't use that anymore, or schools can't apply that to your
and a lot of people's
anymore.
salary is effectively getting cut because of that. Yeah. Not me.
That's not me. I got no buzzing on. All right. With that, I think we'll switch to religious nuttery.
Cornerstone, this might be new to some of you. Scripture says that even our righteous deeds are as filthy rags to God. So even the good things that you do, even things like feeding the hungry and clothing the poor and taking in widows and orphans, as nice as those things are, if not done from the place of obedience to and a relationship with God, are completely worthless and disgusting to God. If you're not daily walking in a place of relationship to God, then the news that we have to bring you is that you're on your way to hell right now.
What do you think of that?
I think that was pretty good. I can tell you've practiced this for a while.
That's from the movie Christ Core, about the hardcore music scene from the Christian side of things.
Okay, I have never.
It's an interesting documentary.
Heard of that?
Made by a guy actually who is from Regina.
Oh, it's also part of Corey's litmus test. As long as you don't run screaming at that point,
then you might be okay. Yeah. So my story is actually from the Friendly Atheist blog on Patheos, and it's related to Pastor Kevin Swanson, and he had some thoughts regarding the recent case of Larry Nassar. Larry Nassar was a doctor for the United States national gymnastics team, and he was recently convicted of, I'm not sure how many cases of sexual assault and rape. And he has been accused of at least 250 cases. He's over decades. So Kevin Swanson, who is a Christian pastor, said some pretty shitty things. I'm just going to read what he said. There is an infatuation with the body and, of course, the sexual aspects of the body as well. Some sports encourage immodesty, revealing large portions of the body, and this happens in some sports. These are risky sports. Here they are. What are the risky sports? Gymnastics and swimming. These are the sports in which there is an added risk. Why are all of the gymnasts at more of a risk than other sports? Swanson asked. Do you really want your daughters involved in a sport that involves a fair amount of immodesty in which red-blooded American male coaches are interacting with these girls? Or worse yet, where the infatuation of body eventually affects the lesbian coaches? Because that's a thing.
That is worse.
So basically,
molestation by a woman is way worse than molestation by a man. That is
that way worse?
True.
I don't believe you. Yeah, so Kevin Swanson thinks that, apparently you can't control yourself if you're around gymnasts. Girls. Who have
non-women children.
Who have, tights on.
We can see their ankles.
Or if they're swimming.
Right.
And he didn't mention figure skating, but I feel like that's also a risk factor.
I would think so, yeah. Anything,
Yeah, well, they can defend themselves. They got, blades on their feet.
Good point.
Do you think he'd give a good, religious session on consent?
I don't think he knows what that word means.
Can you define consent there?
I don't think that man could spell it.
I don't think
Pronounce it.
got consent when he put Jesus down here.
Did Mary consent to having Jesus? I doubt it.
The story of God, it's always the devil that I could relate to the most here. Yeah. He questioned it and got his ass fucking whooped. To the point where he's the fucking devil. Well, of course, there's different versions of everything, but generally, kind of like that. And I'm just thinking here, the skeptics are the devils in all these stories.
Of course.
Yeah. We question things.
The doubters.
We question God.
I don't think that we should be molesting women.
Really?
So, I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, just because they're gymnasts.
Yeah.
What if and I'm just throwing this out here. What if they wear clothing that's tight?
I Oh, well, maybe that changes everything.
No.
No.
No. I don't know. Kevin Swanson, apparently Christian pastor, super moral, uber.
Is this
whatever.
the same pastor who preaches from his basement to like his family followers?
It could be. Could be. I don't keep up on all of these guys as much as I maybe should.
You know, Corey, if religion separated itself from politics, do you see yourself being socially conservative? Oh, sorry, politically conservative?
No, never. No.
If like religion had nothing to do with
No,
it.
not even a little bit.
Yeah. I was just curious, like, at what point did you push a man to actually say, maybe? Yeah.
The problem, at least for me anyway, as far as conservatism goes in the spectrum, is there's an underthread of authoritarianism as you go further right, with the idea that you should just follow the power structures.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Don't question anything.
Yeah. Who's in charge is supposed to be in charge. Let it be. Let it go.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been that way. So why shouldn't it be always that way?
Right. The status quo is the way it should be.
Status quo is a non-specific God in this case, if you're detaching religion.
I have a question. What point can consent be an iffy term? Like, I'm not like trying to like justify anything. I just am curious at what point, because we know it, like with the Aziz Ansari case, like it's so tough to sometimes to be in that situation and realize, okay, what is consent?
I think that I like the push towards the affirmative, enthusiastic consent.
Yes,
that's what I like.
Yeah, like you don't have to phrase it as quite so clinical, but at the same time,
would you like to?
No, but that's actually what advocates like for consent are now saying. Like enthusiastic consent is what you need. Yeah,
like very much like yes.
And there are people like, I mean, aren't there apps out there now? Like if people want to hook up, you can like consent like on the app together. Like
swipe right.
Yeah.
No. Like it's an app, consent app.
Yeah,
Anyways,
there's a legitimate consent.
More
Tinder with consent.
No, I don't think it hooks you up with anyone. But once you found the person,
you can go like check yes.
Yeah, like we are right. It's in writing. We're all agreeing. You know, although consent can then be
consent can be revoked. So how does that work with an app or a contract?
There's an app like I take back refund needed. Like.
But refund?
Yeah.
So I remember back. I feel like there's like a fundamental. I don't know.
Like,
I think we've taken a kind of a weird turn here. Talk about a creepy doctor molesting gymnasts.
That's
and
true.
A pastor that's saying, "Yeah, no, that's the way it is," and then. Now we're talking about this. I think we've taken a left turn. There's derailed, and now this. This is a bit more of a derail.
Left turns, leftist turns.
You know, maybe another way to say this, but I don't know that you can.
It's the only direction I turn.
Can you get consent too much? Like if you get a sense that maybe this person isn't enthusiastic or whatever, like they have maybe ask again or just see how you want to take this slower, is it, or whatever. You know, like
so.
What does consenting too much sound like, though?
No, that's what I'm asking.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah, I don't know.
But if you're getting a sense, if that's what I'm saying, if you have doubt,
right? If you have doubt,
figure it out. It rhymes.
There was something I read that was like, the best I can say about our encounter was that I don't think I raped her. That's not a good sign.
That's not a good first date.
It's not a good any date.
That's not a good any date. That's true. I'm pretty sure. You know what? I think it went well. I did not commit any felony charges.
It's a very low ethical bar.
I think she was okay with what happened. Bar. Maybe.
No. Is that still above or below Jordan Peterson?
It's right on that line.
Is who below?
I'm going to need a hard yes or no there, Corey.
Jordan Peterson's pretty awful. Okay, we're going to go to your story.
Now we get to derail you.
Jordan Peterson
I can't
might actually be more on the consent is implied thing. side of things.
Okay. Our budget went up a little bit. So
I feel like we should either be drinking a beer or throwing out a baseball pitch.
I'm drinking a beer.
Okay.
I don't really conflate O Canada and baseball pitch. It just doesn't seem to work.
I guess it should have been hockey.
Baseball's not our sport.
It should be hockey. Yeah,
I understand the Blue Jays are a thing. They do exist, but
I guess yeah, it should be hockey. Okay.
I understand that baseball exists.
Basketball.
I'm still on the edge of whether it's a sport.
Right.
Has anyone lost an eye?
Probably.
Then it's not a sport.
It's killed a bird. So I got the story where, for those of our non-Canadian listeners who might have heard, and they're not News and Clan listeners, the Canadian Senate passed a bill regarding the wording of our national anthem, hence the music, and we changed the Senate. If it voted to change the lyrics from "In All Our Sons Command" to "In All of Us Command,"
right,
taking a less gendered term. Some people were displeased with this. I'm going to take the very subtle.
Yeah. Conservatives flipped their lid.
in the proper senatorial manner, at least. They didn't, swear about it like online. It's like, stop changing things. No.
Yeah.
They voted to this because it was actually brought up by a dead MP, now dead.
It would have been impressive if it was brought up by the MP while they were dead.
That would be way more
first brought
Zombie
to
MP.
Yes. First brought to session by the MP who died. And this actually causes some bureaucratic snafus. For those of you who don't know, the O Canada, the song, like the actual music, was written in 1880. The English lyrics were written in 1906 and formalized in 1908. Back when it was first written, it was still thou dost in all of us command.
Right.
So again, a non-gendered term. In the 60s, it was changed to be in all our sons command. No big deal. It's actually around the same time that In God We Trust became a thing in the States.
Right.
So now they basically going back to how it was originally written, which is funny in that because some of this Senate opposition was arguing that they didn't want to screw with the words of a dead man. Already happened 50 years ago.
Right.
Just going further back. So it's hard to go through like the comments and on this. And it's like, don't touch it. Don't leave it alone. Leave it alone. It's like, well, it's not really accurate. Right. And they changed it before. So we're just changing it back. Next on the list is the God Keep Our Land, but
yeah, we'll see when that happens.
Yeah.
I actually do teach my son to sing "Please Keep Our Land." I feel like I feel like we should go to "Please" because it's very Canadian, right? And if you're religious, you can say that you can think that you're saying "please" to God if you want. If you're an atheist, you can just think that you're asking other humans, "Please keep our land." And so I teach my son that way, and then when he hears it, whatever before a hockey game, he's like, "Oh, Mom, they're singing it wrong," and I'm like, "Yeah, they are."
An interesting point of fact I want to bring up is that since 1980, they've tried to do this 12 times. They've tried to change the wording 12 times.
Interesting. I wonder how easy it was to change in the 60s. Like, was there a lot of pushback? Was it just kind of no fanfare? Just, change it to all thy sons.
Right.
Do you know, George?
What do you remember of the 60s?
Okay, so I wasn't even a thing yet. But Canada was becoming a country around the 60s. My school has failed me, so
I think Confederation was in 67.
Well, 1867 for Confederation, but there's 1931 is when Canada became officially independent from the UK in terms of foreign policy, and it was like 1960 or 61 is when we probably would have changed the national anthem, as we just heard that we did, and we adopted the Canadian flag back then as well. I don't remember if it was 60 or 61, but that would be probably the time to change it, is when we're actually creating our country.
Yeah, unofficially it became the anthem in 1939, actually.
Oh, okay.
I just wonder how much pushback they have. And whose great idea was this? Were they just like, oh, we don't like it? I'm confused about why it was
We
done in
need
the
to
first
change
place.
it to all our son's command for some reason.
The rationale was honoring veterans.
Oh, is that right? And of course, at that time, veterans were men.
Mostly. I want to actually quote one of the opposition senators for context here.
Okay.
Senator Platt said, "Clearly, I'm disappointed. It's been a long fight. I believe the Canadian public wanted to say international anthem, just like they had in the Great Canadian Flag Debate. This is an issue for the Canadian public to decide, not just a couple of independent senators. Independent is important because technically Liberal senators don't exist in the Senate anymore in Canada.
Right, because they don't want to...
Yeah, because they're trying to departisan the Senate.
Interesting.
You know, I feel like the default political argument is, oh, this has to be a referendum. If you know that you just want to make something so intractable that could never be decided.
But what
you know what I mean? Like, that's what you do.
Rule? Like,
no, but that's what you go to when you're just like, it's just the easiest thing to, because you know it's just too hard. You're never going to get, you know, it's just.
If the majority of citizens got to decide everything, then they would always decide on the status quo, and they would always leave minorities or
maybe
in the
maybe,
dust.
but like in any event, we have a representative democracy. Get over it. Like, what are you going to do?
Right.
Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, an issue like this, really? Like, you're going to have a fucking referendum? How much would that cost? Like, fuck off.
This is actually why reasons like this are exactly why I dug into it a little bit.
Right.
Turns out that few months in May 2017, the Conservative caucus in the Senate, they tried to raise an amendment to the bill. And in bureaucratic speak, when the original sponsor of the bill isn't present to stand for the amendments, they have to basically take a vote and get a unanimous assent in Senate to change the sponsor. And they're not going to get the unanimous assent, so the bill would essentially just cycle through and eventually get forgotten. The Conservative senators tried to propose an amendment to continue with the non-gendered language, but the fact that they were choosing to try to amend it would have caused this bureaucratic screw up.
Okay.
So it's like an underhanded way to kill the bill.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then just as another little bit of trivia, the English lyrics that we have, or even in 1908, they're kind of a result of a mistranslated French. Turns out the French lyrics. Turns out the French lyrics have been basically persistent since the 1880s. Yeah, I've got them here, and I'm not going to sing or anything, but
what? Come on!
I get paid for that. Thank you.
I got a 5 somewhere, I'm sure.
You're lucky.
But it's actually, as far as this goes, it's actually, you might consider it, it kind of goes to the attitude, but it's actually somewhat more religious on the French side.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're not getting changed. But even so, it actually doesn't have any gendered references either.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's the land of, or the particular line would be, glorious deeds circle your brow.
Interesting.
So, yeah. But it actually also references your arm knows how to carry the cross.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, so yay for one little bit of advancement.
I guess, yeah. Like I don't know. I've seen a lot of memes against this. Like conservatives like to make memes.
You know, this
not like liberals. I never
if
see
you
any
think
liberal
about
memes.
it.
You know, I don't see any good liberal memes.
I do. Come on, I see them all the time.
See, the problem is that with a lot of this kind of stuff is why do they have to change it? It's tradition. It's tradition. It's tradition. The problem is you know, why do they always seem to forget that, you know what? It only takes about two generations before something is tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you just, all you have to do is, look back and, it was that way before. You know, like.
That's
50 years ago.
It's been that way my whole life. Yeah, exactly. Your whole life.
Yeah.
Your history is an epic of brilliant deeds. That's probably one of the first things I would.
That's something that seems to need to be changed.
Your history is full of epic deeds.
Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
Je ne parle pas français.
No, but that's it. That's the thing you just said.
What did you just say?
I just said I don't know how to speak French.
Yeah, but I was just saying it's what he.
I also don't know how to speak French.
Je ne parle pas français.
Yeah, probably should learn that someday.
Well.
It sounds like it's really going to happen for you, Corey. Like that.
Google Translate, man.
Yeah, that's right. Good old Google Translate.
You don't want to just add stuff to your day, and then you'll.
That's right. Then you got to keep at. Then you run out of day.
What is?
If you don't take anything away, we can talk about that in bonus stuff. All right. So we're at the listener feedback, new patrons, reviews, and stuff. In regards to our last episode. Magnus commented on Patreon when we were talking about the Higgs boson particle, aka the God particle. The name actually originates from the title of a book by Nobel Prize-winning physicist Leon M. Lederman. The book was given this title because the publisher wouldn't let them call it the goddamn particle. So
I've heard that one. I've heard that before.
I have as well, but I forgot about it when we were talking about it. We have no new patrons, but we have sold 3 shirts since I moved the merchandise store. So that's kind of neat.
Did you buy yourself 3 new?
I did not.
Not yet.
Actually, somebody emailed me and said they were buying a shirt for their husband. So we have listeners who buy our stuff and like our show.
I wonder if it's Megan. I wonder if it is.
Or we have listeners who have wives who don't know what the fuck to get them at some point where they're just like,
No, she said that he loves our show. Her husband loves our show. So
is Lachlan.
It was Lachlan's wife.
I don't know.
Maybe. We have no new reviews. We really like reviews and ratings. So write one and we'll read it on the air, even if it's really mean. Anybody got stuff to plug? Angela's not here.
She's making notebooks on Etsy.
Oh, cool.
Plug your new liberal group to
a liberal group.
People should join it.
I guess that's what I've been saying. So at the U of R, I have the Neoliberal Club, which I am the sole member of so far, and I am the president
and janitor.
I am the janitor. I clean up after everybody. It gets hairy sometimes. Now,
filled with beautiful people.
Yeah. So for February, I've had the plan basically to go around the university and hand out basically just pieces of paper I've printed off at the library, as well as donuts related to the heroes of the slave trade and in honor of Black History Month. So the heroes of slave trade and the civil rights. The first person I've decided on doing totally is John Brown, who in the years before the U.S. Civil War, he actually tried to incite an armed slave rebellion in the South. And before that, he actually led militia to fight the pro-slavery militias in the United States.
Wow.
When he raided a federal armory, got a bunch of guns, and was basically about to try and start this rebellion going. The pro-slavery elements in the South got like 1,000 people to posse up, and they hung him.
Oh, geez.
And it was actually his act that turned a lot of like the Southern Democrats to be really afraid of like another act like that happening.
Oh, okay.
And it pushed them towards the idea that maybe we should leave the Union. And the start of the Civil War happened a few years later.
Interesting.
And that's my tangent.
There you go. No, very cool. Dave, you got anything going on?
Always stuff going on.
You always got stuff going on.
That movie I did, Talent, is playing in Saskatoon this week.
Okay.
At the Rainbow there. So I'm not sure what times or anything, but you can check it out. Oh yeah, there's a really cool screening. Actually, this is really pertinent. This coming Thursday, the 20th? No. I don't know my dates. Today's the 16th, so it's the Thursday after the 16th. Anyway, at the Rainbow Cinemas here in Regina, there's going to be a screening, double screening of The Tin Wife and Gas Can. And if you're enraged by the Colton Bushi thing, verdict, Gas Can's a very interesting little film that was made prior to the Colton Bushi thing actually happening.
Right.
Which is interesting. So, but it definitely discusses some of that stuff. So,
I did have a thing I was going to read today about the Colton Bushi thing, but we used up our time. So,
well, we have 14 minutes. 14 minutes.
Well, maybe we can make it work.
That's it. That's it for me. I got lots of other stuff, but that's good enough.
Okay. I was on an episode of The Podcaster's Happy Life, which I don't have the links to yet, but as soon as it releases, I'll post it. I'm not sure if I mentioned it last time, but I was on the By Any Means podcast and talking to Trav Mamone about skepticism and social justice. And yeah. And make sure to go check out the extra episode of Brainstorm Skeptic Studio where I interviewed Ina Nice Mangos about the political right and the atheist movement. Lisa, you got a book excerpt for
I have
us?
it ready, but if you want to do your Bushi thing, we can do the book excerpt anytime. So it's up to you.
Well, I'll just read this off quick. This is from a lawyer known by, his name is Rob Feist. He's from the area in the north, in the Battleford areas. And he posted a thing on Facebook, and it got shared around quite a bit. And yeah, so I'm just going to read it verbatim, except with a couple quick edits, just because it's not Facebook, it's audio. But I'm going to start it here. As I have been asked by a couple people, I wanted to provide a few thoughts on the evidence at the Gerald Stanley trial. This is before the verdict, by the way. I have kept on top of the trial, as it is of historic importance to our community. I have followed the evidence closely in person, in media, and on Twitter, and attended to watch summations of the Crown and defense cases this morning. Before talking about the key issues, it is worth talking about what the key issues aren't. First, there is no debate about the basic who, what, when, and where questions. Gerald Stanley held the gun that discharged and killed Colton Bushi, and the resultant injury was the cause of death. No debate there was a homicide or that Gerald Stanley caused that homicide. All of that is admitted. Second, the case is not about self-defense. All the internet yapping about castle law and property rights came to nothing at trial, and Mr. Stanley did not make a self-defense argument because the defense lawyer, knowing his job, knew that Gerald Stanley was not under threat when the gun was fired. In Canadian law, lethal force in self-defense is only justified in the face of threat of serious injury or death to you or another person. That threat did not exist in this case, and wisely, the defense did not grasp at that straw. This case changes nothing about the right to self-defense, and those nonsense arguments should stop. The issue the jury is forced to decide on, the defense put to the jury, is limited only to the defense of accident, and here is where the evidence put forward by Gerald Stanley is exceptionally interesting. To set the scene on the day in question, an SUV carrying Colton Bushi and 4 other young people came onto the Stanley farm and was located at various points on the Stanley driveway. Gerald Stanley and his son Sheldon formed the opinion that the young people had come to the farm to steal, and Mr. Stanley and Sheldon Stanley decided to give some form of chase or response. Sheldon ran toward the vehicle and smashed the windshield with a hammer he was carrying. Mr. Stanley kicked out the tail light. After the windshield was smashed, the vehicle carrying Bushi took a hard turn into an SUV owned by the Stanleys, and the Stanleys felt the crash was deliberate and potentially a run at Sheldon. Gerald Stanley ran back to his shed and got a Tokarev pistol. Sheldon went to the house where there were several other firearms. One of the witnesses in the vehicle claimed that Gerald yelled at Sheldon to go to the house to get a firearm, but Sheldon's evidence was that he went into the house to retrieve his keys. At that point, Bushi's vehicle appeared to have been immobilized in the Stanley's driveway, and 2 male occupants exited the vehicle. 2 female occupants and Bushi, who was likely passed out or asleep, stayed inside. Now here's where the crux of Mr. Stanley's evidence on his defense of accident and where Mr. Stanley's evidence becomes... Here is the crux of Mr. Stanley's evidence on his defense of accident and where Mr. Stanley's evidence becomes truly amazing. Stanley claimed while in the shed he loaded the Tokarev with 3 shells. He claimed he thought he loaded 2, but later realized there were 3, the same number the RCMP found had been discharged. Stanley then claimed he pointed the semi-automatic Tokarev up into the air and began pulling the trigger to fire warning shots. He claimed he fired 2 warning shots and after that believed the firearm was empty. After the shots were fired, the 2 males who exited the vehicle ran from the scene, leaving only Bushi and the 2 female occupants in the vehicle. Gerald Stanley then claimed, even though he believed he had only put 2 rounds in the Tokarev, that he had pulled the trigger several more times after the warning shots to make the firearm safe, and nothing happened. He then claimed he opened the slide and removed the magazine, also to ensure the firearm was made safe. Gerald Stanley then claimed he saw the riding lawnmower his wife had been driving parked on the lawn with his wife no longer driving, and somehow formed the belief that she may have been run over by the vehicle containing Bushi. Gerald Stanley then claimed he ran to the Bushi vehicle and wanted to look underneath to ensure his wife was not there. He claimed as he was going to look under the vehicle revved its engine, and he decided he needed to turn the vehicle off. Gerald Stanley then claimed holding the Tokarev in his right hand, he reached through the Bushi SUV's driver's side window with his left hand to try to turn off the ignition. He has brackets here. I encourage you to actually try this on a vehicle and think about why you would use your left hand to turn off a vehicle as opposed to switching hands and putting your firearm in your left hand, motion it out. Using your left hand makes no sense and is incredibly awkward. Then he goes on. Gerald Stanley then claimed that as he was trying to turn the ignition off, the Tokarev was in his right hand, pointed at Colton Bushi's skull, and Stanley claimed at that moment a hang fire occurred. There was still a shell in the chamber, and the firearm discharged spontaneously without a trigger pull, killing Colton. Despite the fact Stanley had opened the action, pulled the magazine out, and repeatedly dry-fired it. And despite the fact that hang fires are extremely rare and normally last less than half a second. Gerald Stanley's defense is the defense of accident. If you believe it, his defense explains all of the physical evidence, and most particularly a Tokarev casing found on the SUV dash and Colton's DNA found on the Tokarev itself. But to believe it completely, you have to accept the following. And then he gives a series of A through H. A. Gerald Stanley did not know how many rounds he put into the Tokarev. B. Gerald Stanley, who believed he or his family were under threat, loaded his firearm with 2 shells and then fired both shells in the air, leaving his firearm empty and useless for defense. C. Gerald Stanley tried to make the Tokarev safe by repeatedly pulling its trigger in the air. D. Gerald Stanley took the time in this situation to make the Tokarev safe before proceeding to the vehicle he believed he had run over his wife. E. Gerald Stanley believed the Bushi SUV had run over his wife, even though there was no explanation for his belief other than his wife not being on the lawnmower. F. Gerald Stanley went to the window of the vehicle to turn his vehicle off to immobilize it, even though the driver had exited the vehicle and Colton Bushi, the person nearest the steering wheel, was asleep or passed out. G. Gerald Stanley used his left hand to attempt to turn off the vehicle, keeping the firearm in his right hand, even though he claimed the firearm was made safe, and using her left hand through a driver's side window to turn off an ignition is incredibly awkward. And H. Gerald Stanley experienced a hang fire, an extremely rare occurrence in itself, with a duration of many seconds and almost impossible length of time for a hang fire. At the precise second, his Tokarev was aimed at close range at Colton Bushi's skull. Points A, C, D, and E, and F make Mr. Stanley's story hard to believe. Points B and G make simply no logical sense whatsoever. Point H is beyond reason and is a submission somewhere along the lines of the magic bullet of JFK that shot JFK. While the story raised by Mr. Stanley is not impossible, in the way that suggesting Colton Bushi died of a heart attack 10 seconds before he was shot is not impossible, in my opinion, it is an extreme stretch to suggest that such a story of this level of credibility should raise a reasonable doubt as to Mr. Stanley's intentions. This is what I have reviewed as a fair synopsis of Mr. Stanley's evidence that the homicide of Colton Bushi was accidental. This post included a CBC article outlining the events as well as a various testimony in the trial. I'll include a ton of links in this as well. Ultimately, Gerald Stanley was found not guilty of second-degree murder, which is murder without premeditation, and he was found not guilty of a lesser charge of manslaughter, which is a charge regarding accidental death, whether through an unlawful act or an act of criminal negligence. I guess we might as well start that outro. We're probably running short on time.
You are correct. There's about 4 minutes till we
all right, let's blast through this.
We're going to do it.
You can check out the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net. Thanks to our financial supporters, the Utah Outcasts, Bassett, Will, Aaron, Daryl, Dustin Sucks, Lachlan, Lisa, Magnus, Michael, Nathan, Positively Skeptical, Rob, and Stephanie. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. You can also support us by donating to our GoFundMe for the conference at gofundme.com/shift-2-reason-conference-2018. We're over $1,000 and we'll likely start booking things soon, or you can go buy some stuff to support us at tpublic.com/stores/brainstorm-podcast-gear. They have much better shipping prices than other online stores. They are a great place for you to get your stuff. They have a sale on from the 21st till the 25th, and everything is marked down, so check it out before the sale ends. You can join us every second week when we broadcast live on brainstormradio.net. Our next show is on March 2nd, and our guest will be David Silverman, president of the American Atheists. I won't be here for this one, but Destin is going to take over as host, and I'm sure it will be fine.
Roast.
Thanks to Gleb for joining us. You can find more of his stuff at protruthpledge.org. Thanks to Dave for our intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi for doing the new voiceover for the intro. Thanks to Alex Kepper-Murdoch for doing our ads. And thanks to Jason Camo for the outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. Also, Aaron Rabbi does the Embrace the Void podcast. Look for that. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Remember to give us a rating, a thumbs up, or a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, share the show, and spread the word. For live listeners, stick around for the after show. You can go to brainstormafterhours.com and listen to the bonus content before it goes patron only. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interactions with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.